Hello, I'm Jeremy, and welcome to another episode of Jeremy U's Reviews, where mistreated movies get a second chance. You might remember, a while back, I made a video titled 5 Weird Movies. Well, this is sort of a spiritual sequel to that video. But this time, instead of movies, the target is sketch comedy. I absolutely love sketch comedy. It's an incredibly fun, creative, and enjoyable subgenre of comedy. And when you combine the slick, breezy pace of a sketch comedy show with the absolute creativity and surrealness that can come from absurdist comedy, you get an absolutely winning combination that rarely misses. And today, I'd like to review 5 underrated surreal sketch comedy shows that you guys should check out. Oh, and for those who don't have enough time to binge watch a full series, don't worry. These shows have a very small amount of episodes, so you can breeze through them real quick. Anyways, let's begin with the first show on the docket. How to Be Wellness is a 9-episode sketch comedy web series created by Grouse House, which is an Australian comedy network created by absolutely phenomenal comedy group Auntie Donna. Each episode surrounds Australian comedian Lockie Ross, playing a fictional version of himself, starting out with the appearance of teaching the viewer some sort of life lesson, such as how to clean yourself and how to deal with an awkward meetup, but then the sketch takes a surreal turn and shenanigans ensue. By far one of the best parts of the show is Lockie Ross himself. Before this show, I had never heard of Lockie Ross, but after seeing him in How to Be Wellness, I'm definitely a fan. Ross just does such a good job in this show. He has an incredibly chill and likable vibe, great comedic timing, perfect energy, and he's able to play both the straight guy and the crazy guy really well. Ross hits the perfect balance between being subdued enough to contrast off the crazy things that happen in the show and energetic enough to have his own crazy moments as well. Yet at the same time, he still feels realistic enough to where we can see ourselves acting just like he does if we were in those situations. Overall, Lockie Ross just does an absolutely fantastic job in this show, reaching the perfect balance between chill and crazy, and having a ton of energy and charisma that allows him to really shine as a comedic presence. The format of the show is also great. Each episode of How to Be Wellness basically just shows Lockie Ross in his life, going through a certain situation, like accidentally running into someone he knows and not wanting to talk to them, trying to impress his dad at a barbecue, or figuring out what to wear and to go to an event. They start out either pretty normal or odd, but relatively normal. But as the episode goes on, things get weirder and weirder until it ultimately culminates in an absolutely brilliant punchline. Each episode does such a great job handling its premise, allowing the comedic potential of each premise to be executed effectively without ever feeling like the joke is getting old. And of course, there's a ton of unpredictable twists and turns as the episode goes on. The rest of the cast is great too. The various friends and acquaintances that Lockie runs into are equally funny, played by really good actors, and having equally good timing. The highlights being 3 talking towels voiced by the members of Auntie Donna, and a talking salt lamp who, let's just say, has some surprises in store. Overall, How to Be Wellness is just a genuinely entertaining and awesome sketch comedy show with an awesome main star, a ton of creativity, awesome surreal humor, a ton of relatability, and a great ability to have its surreal jokes feel fresh and unpredictable. If you're into the surreal brand of Australian humor that Auntie Donna employs or looking for some relatable comedy, How to Be Wellness is an absolute must check out. An absolutely fantastic sketch show, and I'm super excited to see what Lockie Ross does next. $1 Million Extreme Presents World Peace is a short-lived sketch comedy show created by the titular comedy group $1 Million Extreme. This is easily the most recognizable show I'll be talking about in this video, due to its connections with Adult Swim, the infamy surrounding its cancellation after only 6 episodes, and the many controversies faced by MDE's leader, Sam Hyde. And iffy Sam Hyde stuff aside, it's pretty cool. World Peace just has this unique approach to comedy, taking the classic Adult Swim psychedelic aesthetic and twisting it in its own dark, unique way. Unlike How to Be Wellness, which remains pretty grounded even at its weirdest moments, World Peace is just a barrage of uniquely dark insanity, with Sam Hyde and crew coming up with the craziest ideas and executing them with expert precision. It's one of those shows where I honestly couldn't describe the sketches without sounding like a crazy person, because World Peace is so demented that it genuinely defies description. And the cast is absolutely perfect. Now, I know that Sam Hyde has gotten into several controversies and has had several accusations thrown at him. I don't really have any feelings on that one way or another. They could be true, they could be false. The man is so unhinged and surreal that it's hard to tell where his persona ends and the real Sam Hyde begins, and that's not really the focus of this video. I'm just here to talk about his show. And with that out of the way, Hyde does a great job in this show. Sam Hyde is very similar to people like Tom Green and Eric Andre, very grand and crazy personalities whose sense of humor relies on the grand personality of his characters combined with the straight-laced reactions from the normal people around him. I can definitely understand some people finding his performances too unnerving or obnoxious, but I personally find the energy and charisma he puts on display to be really enjoyable and add to the surreal nature of the sketches he appears in. The rest of the cast is great too, as the actors bring a ton of personality to their roles and are able to act as subdued or as unhinged as the role requires. The interactions they have with each other and Hyde feel so natural and help the sketches feel even more engaging. And the way they execute the comedy in each sketch is perfectly in line with the insanity of the show. But while the comedy and acting are absolutely fantastic, what really makes World Peace such a great show is the aesthetic. The show has this incredibly unique, nostalgic, psychedelic aesthetic that really allows World Peace to have its own unique identity. Whenever we get a break between sketches, we get these really cool, psychedelic and surreal bumpers with a ton of cool Technicolor graphics that give off sort of an old school 90s nostalgia vibe. It's honestly a really cool aesthetic that does wonders for the show and allows it to really come alive and grow into its own unique beast. Overall, Million Dollar Extreme Presents World Peace is a love it or hate it type show from a love it or hate it type group. In addition to being created by a very controversial figure, World Peace is just a very hectic, chaotic, morbid, surreal, and bizarre show, which will definitely press some buttons. But if you like that sort of thing or are nostalgic for the iDub/Filthy Frank era of the internet, I recommend giving it a shot. I also heard buzz about Sam and crew reuniting in order to make a sequel to World Peace. We'll see if that gets anywhere. I haven't really heard a ton of news about it. But until then, we still have the magnificent craziness of the original 6 episodes. An acquired taste for sure, but one that's absolutely fantastic. Also, a YouTube channel named Ebenfell made a great video about the show titled MDE World Peace, A Peaceful Retrospective. It's a really entertaining watch that goes in depth on the show's creation and the deeper meanings of certain sketches. So definitely check out that video after you're done with this one. Link in the description.
Compulsory Entertainment. It's compulsory.
Like How to Be Wellness, Compulsory Entertainment was made by Grouse House. And where wellness was odd but still relatively structured, Compulsory Entertainment is just balls to the wall insanity. Each sketch takes an already surreal premise and takes it in areas that supersede even the surreal direction that the sketch originally had. To show you what I mean, I'm going to use the first episode, How to Deal with Cops, Highway Pigs, as an example. The premise of this skit is that the police are employing a special X-ray camera to detect people putting up middle fingers behind their car doors. Already a weird idea for a sketch. But it gets even weirder when later on in the skit, a guy named Peter, who's very outspoken about these new measures, decides to fight them by getting a doctor to remove the bones from his middle finger and setting up fishing wire in his car to attach to his middle finger in a pulley-like system that makes his middle finger undetectable to their x-rays. I am not kidding. All of that actually happens in the skit. And you get that kind of madness all throughout Compulsory Entertainment. Each sketch starts out with a relatively odd idea, such as finding the origins of a meme and dealing with someone who keeps slapping your back, and adds a secret punch that makes the idea even more insane. I'm not going to spoil any of these punches. You'll just have to watch the show for yourself. But take my word for it, they are insane. The cast is also fantastic. Each member of the cast for Compulsory Entertainment does a great job adding to the energy of the show. They're able to be exaggerated enough to make the comedy land and be especially absurd, without ever feeling too obnoxious or cartoony. However, there's one character that's particularly interesting. You see, most of the skits end with the news anchor summing up the events and adding some more stories on top. Now, most shows would just have one of their cast members act as the news anchor. But that's not what Compulsory Entertainment does. What Compulsory Entertainment does is have the news anchor be a stock PNG of a news anchor with a mouth digitally added into the PNG. And it's just as hilarious and weird in practice as it sounds in description. It's such a small thing, but I honestly love it due to how absurd it is. There's no story reason behind it. There's no reason they couldn't just have a regular news anchor. They just do it because it's insane. And if that's not a perfect reflection of the show, I don't know what is. Finally, let's talk about the black comedy elements. Now, while the show isn't as messed up as World Peace or a certain show coming up, there are certain jokes that, let's just say, push the envelope, either by doing something messed up or joking about messed up things. And in terms of this type of comedy, I think the show does it fairly well. The jokes are more used for an absurd punchline rather than to disgust or offend the viewer. And it never goes too far to where most people would have a major problem with it. You might have a problem if you're super sensitive to that kind of stuff, but for most of the people, you'll probably be fine. Overall, Compulsory Entertainment is a fever dream in the best possible way. Every sketch is an incredibly surreal showcase, taking an already weird premise and adding a twist to make it even more insane, complemented by a fantastic cast that really blends into their roles. If you want something truly bizarre, Compulsory Entertainment is definitely a great series to check out, and I can't wait to see what Grouse House cooks up next. Created by Joel Jessup, Sarah Darling, and Mr. Weeble, and airing on the now-defunct adult comedy animation channel Hoo Ha, Wobble Box is a major outlier from the 4 other shows mentioned in this video. The first and most obvious outlier is that it's animated. But unlike other adult animated comedy shows, each sketch in Wobble Box utilizes a different animation style, with the only maintaining animation styles being the ones in recurring sketches, such as Rescue Whale and Pigeons with Blank. I like this, as not only is the animation style for each segment really cool, but it really allows Wobble Box to have its own unique identity. And the second outlier is where the other shows in this video, including the one I'm talking about after this segment, are more methodological in terms of their comedy, taking care to make more elaborate and in-depth sketches. Wobble Box is more quick-paced in its comedy style. It has a similar vibe to shows like Astiff Movie and Robot Chicken, just having a comedy sketch come, deliver a quick joke, and then immediately move on to the next one. It's a pretty simple format, but one that's executed effectively. As for the comedy itself, oh man, is it funny. The comedy in Wobble Box is absolute insanity, filled with a ton of dumb puns, rampant absurdity, gross humor that goes just far enough to make the comedy work, and an incredibly unique anti-comedy style, where certain sketches are so patently absurd, you can't tell what the joke is supposed to be, but you laugh anyway. It's an absolute blast for any fan of classic random internet humor. I also like how certain episodes have a reoccurring sketch that's only present within that episode. For example, the episode Horse Pit has a reoccurring sketch called Nostalgia Jug, where an old man reaches into a jar and reads off various old stuff. And the episode Juice Yak has a sci-fi parody where an action hero and his robot assistant take forever to get to a villain planning to destroy the hero's home planet. It's a really cool idea that allows each episode to stand out and allows for some clever overarching jokes that just wouldn't hit the same in a single sketch. Oh, and as you can tell by those episode titles, the episode titles of Wobble Box are just as random as the show itself. Also, similar to World Peace, Wobble Box has bumpers, where the titular Wobble Box is imposed on a live-action background with someone saying, "Wobble Box!" in a weird way. It's a pretty solid series of bumpers that adds to the charm of the show and look insanely cool. But the main reason that Wobble Box holds up so well is nostalgia. For me, I used to watch Hoo Ha and Mr. Weeble a lot when I was younger. And revisiting the show years later and laughing at the same humor I found funny when I was a little kid is just such a satisfying feeling. And even ignoring my personal nostalgic feelings for Wobble Box, the show's overall humor and style is reminiscent of an older era of the internet. While obnoxious gross-out comedy and absurdist anti-comedy is far from an ancient relic, there's a certain charm to the way Wobble Box does its comedy that you can't really capture in a modern setting. Partly due to the unique comedy of Mr. Weeble and crew, partly due to the unrestricted nature of Hoo Ha. Seriously, this is honestly one of the tamer shows on that channel. But also partly due to how much comedy has changed. Wobble Box just overall has a unique 2013 charm to its comedy that can never really be recaptured. And watching the show feels like being transported back to an older, more simple version of the internet. And that nostalgic feeling really makes Wobble Box an incredibly comfy show to watch. It's just so fun to get lost in this old era of the internet comedy and get engrossed in the strange and unique world of Wobble Box. Neat stuff. Overall, Wobble Box is an incredibly gross, surreal, and nostalgic fever dream that I am so glad I rediscovered. If you're a fan of shows like Robot Chicken, Astiff Movie, The Mighty Boosh, and the Cartoon Network Mad Show, and have a strong tolerance for gross-out humor, you'll have an absolute blast with Wobble Box. An incredibly simple but nostalgic and charming show. Oh, and before I move on to the final show, I have one thing to say. Hey YouTube, just because something is animated doesn't mean it's for kids! Our final show of the evening, Jam, is easily the most surreal and tonally different of the five. I found out about it from a YouTuber named Ruben GV, whose video about the series I put a link to in the description, along with another video about the series I found from a channel called Reframed. And where the previous 4 shows had an element of levity to them, Jam is black comedy in its purest form. I'm not talking South Park and It's Always Sunny type of black comedy. I'm talking about hardcore black comedy. The comedy in Jam is incredibly dry, morbid, surreal, and sometimes doesn't even feel like comedy. Watching a sketch from Jam feels like being transported into a strange world that feels like our own, but also feels slightly off. It's not the type of show you laugh at. It's more the type of show where you just look in utter fascination at the insanity on screen and occasionally laugh at some of the absurd moments that pop up. Jam really is just in a league of its own in terms of how bizarre, surreal, and unique it is in terms of its comedy. The cast is also fantastic. Comprising of 6 members, including the show's writer and director Chris Morris, who you might know from shows like Brass Eye and The Day Today, and who also produced the radio show Jam is based on, Blue Jam, each cast member does a great job striking the perfect balance of funny enough to make the comedy work and toned down enough to allow the show's serious atmosphere to get through. They perfectly capture the dark and surreal atmosphere of Jam, while being allowed to show off their comedic chops. Overall, pretty cool stuff. And the atmosphere is also fantastic. In order to help emphasize the show's surreal nature, Jam has a very potent atmosphere that allows the jokes to really sink in and for the audience to be immersed in the surreal world of the show. And a major contributing factor for said atmosphere is the show's musical score. The music of Jam is mostly made up of really cool ambient tracks, which not only allows the show to have a unique image, but the mellow and eerie tracks blended perfectly with the dark and surreal world of Jam, perfectly complementing each other and making Jam the incredibly unique show that it is. That's why the intro music for this segment of the video was It's Just a Burning Memory by The Caretaker. Because while the song doesn't appear in the show, it perfectly matches the ambient nature present within Jam and the unnerving yet immersive atmosphere of the show. Jam is also very experimental in terms of its visuals, shooting certain sketches in unconventional aspect ratios and visual styles. It's a very ambitious style that not only gives Jam its own distinct look, but also adds to the unnerving and surreal atmosphere of the show. Finally, let's talk about something I don't normally bring up in my videos, the credits. Unlike most shows which just display the credits at the end of the episode, what appears instead at the end of Jam's episodes is text that reads www.jamcredits.com. Unfortunately, the website doesn't work anymore, but at the time, it displayed the full credits for the show. It's a pretty interesting gimmick that might not be useful anymore, but still showcases Jam's unique identity. Really cool stuff. Overall, Jam is one of the most fascinating and unique television shows I've ever seen. Its sense of humor is so strange, dark, and morbid in a way I haven't seen anywhere else. Supported by a great cast, cool soundtrack, unique visuals, and a potent atmosphere. It's definitely an acquired taste, as its uniquely morbid comedy, bizarre nature, and disturbing moments could be a turnoff for some, but if you're into that thing, Jam will be 100% up your alley. An incredibly bizarre and unique show, and thanks to Ruben GV for introducing me to it. And that's the video. Let me know in the comments if any of these shows piqued your interests, if you have any overall thoughts on the shows, if you've even seen them. And if there are any surreal sketch comedy shows I might not know about, I'm always looking for these types of shows. But until next time, this is Jeremy ending our broadcast day. Bye.